On a quiet Thursday morning in the small town of Maplewood, the sun had just begun peeking over the red brick houses and maple trees lining the neighborhood. It was the kind of place where people still waved at their mail carriers, where children rode bikes to school, and where neighbors shared extra tomatoes from their gardens. At the corner of Birch Street stood a local pharmacy, the kind everyone trusted, a place where elderly folks picked up prescriptions and chatted with the pharmacist about their grandkids. That morning, 72-year-old Lillian Carter walked slowly toward the entrance of the pharmacy, her cane tapping gently on the sidewalk. Her silver curls framed a face full of tenderness and quiet strength. Even though age had softened her posture, she still carried herself like someone who'd seen the world and refused to be broken by it. She lived alone now. Her husband, Michael, had passed from a long battle with cancer 5 years earlier. Her daughter lived in Atlanta with her own family, and though they talked often, the empty house still echoed with memories she wished she could touch. Her late husband had been a veteran, a man of discipline and kindness, who always told her she was the strongest woman on God's earth. Some nights, she still whispered back to him. But today felt different. Heavy. Hard. 4 months, she'd been caring for her younger sister, May, who was struggling with early Alzheimer's. Lillian had taken her to doctor appointments, helped her bathe, cooked her meals, watching the woman she grew up with slip away piece by piece. And now the doctor had prescribed a new medication, expensive and hard to find. So Lillian came early, hoping the pharmacy had managed to order it. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed softly. The pharmacist, a kind middle-aged man named Rob, gave her a tired smile when she approached the counter. "Morning, Miss Lillian. You're early today. I'm praying you got my sister's prescription. She's been having a rough week." Rob sighed, and her heart sank before he even spoke. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "Insurance is rejecting it again. Says it needs reauthorization. You'll need to fill out another form. You know how slow these systems are." Lillian closed her eyes for a moment. She felt the exhaustion of caregiving settle heavier on her shoulders. "Lord, help me," she whispered. She wasn't angry, she was just tired and scared for her sister. She reached into her purse for her ID to sign paperwork, but her fingers brushed against nothing. She stopped, confused. She always kept her wallet in the same side pocket. She checked again, then again. Her heart thudded. "Oh no, no. I must have left it at home," she muttered. Rob nodded sympathetically. "It happens. You can bring it back later. Let me print the forms so you can take them home." But before he could move, another voice cut sharply through the air. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the counter." Everyone turned. Standing near the entrance was Officer Matthew Kane, a 30-year-old police officer with a tall frame and stiff posture. He'd just walked in on routine patrol but froze when he noticed Lillian emptying her purse with shaking hands. "Sir." Lillian blinked. "Is there a problem here?" Kane asked, walking closer, his hand near his belt. "I saw you emptying your bag." The clerk looked uncomfortable. Rob instantly raised both hands. "No, no, officer. There's no problem. She's a regular customer." But Kane's eyes were fixed on Lillian now. "Ma'am, do you have ID on you?" "No, officer. I believe I left it at home," she answered calmly. "But I can go get it." His jaw tightened. "So you're trying to pick up a controlled medication without identification?" Rob stepped forward again. "Officer, she's picking it up for her sister." "I'm talking to her, sir," Kane snapped. Lillian swallowed the lump forming in her throat. "I've been taking care of my sister," she explained softly. "She's struggling with Alzheimer's. I just need—" Kane raised a hand. "I'm going to need you to come with me." The entire pharmacy fell silent. Lillian steadied her cane. "Excuse me. You're attempting to obtain medication without proper identification, and you're causing suspicion by emptying your bag. This store has had shoplifting incidents before. I need to search you." A gasp rippled through the customers. Even Rob looked horrified. She's 72, he protested. But Kane ignored him and reached for Lillian's arm. Officer, please, there's been a misunderstanding, she pleaded. I live 2 blocks away. I can get my ID. His grip tightened on her wrist. That's enough. You're resisting. Her heart pounded as he twisted her arm behind her back. Pain shot to her shoulder. Sir, please. You're hurting me. Officer Kane. Rob shouted. Let her go. Other customers began recording. But the officer didn't release her. Her vision blurred. She thought of her husband, of the dignity he taught her to carry. She had survived losing him, survived raising a child alone, survived a world that wasn't always kind to her. But nothing prepared her for this moment, being treated like a criminal in a place where she'd been loved for years. The click of cold metal echoed through the aisles as he handcuffed her. Her cane fell to the floor. Her breath cracked in her chest. People stared, horrified, murmuring, "That poor woman," and "This isn't right." Officer Kane guided her toward the exit, his tone cold and professional, but his eyes showing a flicker of doubt now that cameras were watching. And just before she reached the door, her voice broke through the silent room, soft but filled with truth she'd earned over a lifetime. "Officer, I need you to listen carefully to me," she said, looking over her shoulder with tears forming. "I am not a criminal. I am a United States federal judge." Kane froze mid-step. Everyone else did too. Even time seemed to stop. For a long moment, the officer stood motionless, her frail wrist still captured in his grip. The weight of her words hit him like a blow he never saw coming. A federal judge," he stammered. Lillian lifted her chin, the quiet dignity returning to her despite the pain in her shoulder. "Yes," she said. "Appointed 24 years ago. I've spent my entire life fighting for justice, for people you might treat just like this." The officer's fingers trembled as he released her arm. He fumbled with the handcuffs, unlocking them with hands that suddenly didn't feel steady. I didn't know, ma'am. I thought. You thought I fit the profile," she whispered. Her words weren't angry, just heartbreakingly tired. He stepped back, looking like he'd been shoved into ice water. A few customers lowered their phones, others kept filming. "Ma'am, please accept my apology," Kane pleaded. "I misjudged the situation. Truly." Lillian winced as she massaged her wrist. "I'm 72 years old. I was trying to pick up my sister's medicine. And you grabbed me like I was a dangerous suspect." She bent slowly, her joints stiff, and picked up her cane. Rob rushed to help her stand. "You okay, Miss Lillian?" he asked, his voice shaking with anger and concern. "I'll be fine, sweetheart," she replied, squeezing his hand. But inside her chest, something fragile had cracked. Officer Kane swallowed hard. "Judge Carter, please, is there anything I can do? I didn't mean for this to happen." Lillian looked at him, studying his face. Not with bitterness, but with the wisdom of someone who'd witnessed decades of human mistakes. "Do you have a mother, Officer Kane?" she asked quietly. His expression softened. "Yes. She's in assisted living. Early dementia." A silence passed between them, two people connected now by shared burdens neither expected to confess. "Then you know what it feels like," she said. "To watch someone you love slip away. Every day is hard. Every errand feels like a mountain. And you just made my mountain heavier." His eyes glistened as guilt folded into him. I'm truly sorry." Rob cleared his throat gently. "Judge Carter, if you need anything." But she shook her head. "I just want to go home," she whispered. Kane stepped forward. "Let me drive you, please. Let me make this right." But Lillian, exhausted and shaken, simply turned toward the door. "No, thank you, officer. What I need is respect. That's something you have to choose to give, not something I can accept from pity." She walked out slowly, leaning on her cane. Her knees were weak. Her heart was heavy. and her soul felt bruised. She walked the 2 blocks home through the cool morning air. Every step hurt, not physically but emotionally. Not because she'd been handcuffed, but because she'd been unseen. Invisible. To a world she'd spent her entire life trying to help. Inside her house, she set her cane beside the door and sank into Michael's old chair. She touched the worn fabric, remembering how he used to sit there reading the newspaper, telling jokes only she ever laughed at. "Oh, Michael," she whispered, choking back tears. "You always believed the world would get better. Today, I'm not so sure." She cried softly, not for herself, but for every person treated unfairly, for every elderly soul carrying battles no one could see, for every caregiver drowning in quiet sacrifice. She didn't cry as a judge. She cried as a sister, a widow, a tired human being. But the day wasn't finished with her yet. 2 hours later, a knock echoed through her front door. When she opened it, Officer Kane stood on her porch, hat in hand, a deep sorrow in his eyes. Behind him were 2 police supervisors. "Judge Carter," he said, voice cracking, "I couldn't walk away. Not after what I did. Please allow me to explain." She stepped aside, letting them in. Her living room smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Kane took a breath. "I know an apology can't erase what happened. But when I got back in my patrol car, I thought about my mom. How scared she gets when she forgets things. How vulnerable she is. And I realized I treated you like a threat instead of like someone's mother, someone's sister, someone who needed help." He blinked rapidly, trying not to break. "That was my failure. My bias. My lack of patience. And I'm ashamed of it." The supervisors stood silent, watching him unravel his regret with sincerity. "I read about you," he continued. "Your rulings. How many families you helped. How many veterans you protected. You've done more for this country than I ever have." He wiped his eyes quickly. "I shouldn't have grabbed you. I shouldn't have assumed anything about you. I shouldn't have scared you. And I'll accept whatever complaint you file." Lillian walked slowly to the mantel and picked up a framed photo of herself and her sister from 20 years ago, both smiling, both full of life before memory loss stole pieces of May away. "You see this woman?" Lillian asked. "This is my sister. Yesterday she didn't recognize me for a full 30 minutes. She cried when she finally did. I filed that prescription hoping to give her a better week. Maybe a clearer day." She set the photo down carefully. "And when you stopped me, officer, I wasn't a judge. I wasn't anyone important. I was just a sister trying desperately to keep her world from falling apart." Kane bowed his head. "I understand," he whispered. Lillian exhaled slowly, then looked at him with tired compassion. "Officer Kane, the uniform is not an excuse for losing your humanity. But neither is your mistake the end of yours. What matters is what you do next." He lifted his eyes, hope flickering. "May I ask, what should I do?" She gestured toward the chair across from her. "Sit," she said. "Let me tell you something about justice." And the 3 officers listened as she spoke about fairness, empathy, accountability, and the power of seeing people as human beings first. When they left an hour later, Kane looked lighter, not forgiven, but changed. The next week arrived with soft spring rain, tapping on rooftops and painting the sidewalks with shimmering puddles. Lillian had spent the days tending to her sister, filling out insurance forms, and trying to let the pharmacy incident fade into memory. She told no one, not even her daughter. She didn't want to worry her. But Maplewood wasn't a place where stories stayed quiet for long. The videos customers recorded at the pharmacy had gone viral. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. And suddenly, neighbors were knocking on her door with casseroles, flowers, cards, tears, and apologies from people who'd never wronged her but felt the world owed her better. The mayor called. The police chief called. An entire city suddenly remembered her name, her courtroom legacy, her decades of service. But none of them knew the whole truth, how deeply it had broken her spirit. One evening, a letter arrived in her mailbox. The handwriting was shaky but sincere. From Officer Matthew Kane to Judge Lillian Carter. She opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter that began, "I need to thank you for something. You didn't forgive me that day. You didn't excuse me. But you taught me." He continued with a confession. "After leaving your home, I visited my mother in assisted living. I held her hand longer than I have in months. I helped her eat instead of letting the nurses do it. I realized I had become numb, not to criminals, but to people. And that scared me more than anything." He wrote about how he'd asked for additional bias awareness training, how he requested to be placed on community duty instead of patrol, and how he had personally apologized to the pharmacy staff for causing distress. The final paragraph was the one that made her hands tremble. "I hope someday I can earn forgiveness. Not because of your title, but because you deserved kindness long before I ever knew your name." A tear rolled down her cheek. Not from pain, but from something slowly healing. A week later, she visited the pharmacy again. Rob greeted her warmly. "Miss Lillian, we finally got the medication approved. It's all set." Customers she'd never met smiled at her, whispered blessings, offered hugs. But what surprised her most was the officer standing near the back of the pharmacy. Matthew Kane, dressed in plain clothes, holding grocery bags of supplies. When their eyes met, he approached slowly. "Judge Carter," he said gently, "may I help you carry your things?" She hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. "Yes, Officer Kane. You may." They walked outside into the warm afternoon sun. Birds chirped in the maple trees. Children laughed in the distance. Life felt normal again, but with something softer, something wiser between them. As they reached her gate, Kane paused. "I know this doesn't change what happened," he said. "But I want you to know I'm trying, every day, to be better. For my mother. For people like your sister. For everyone I serve." Lillian looked at him, her eyes gentle but firm. "Trying," she said, "is the beginning of justice." He nodded, emotion thick in his throat. "Thank you, Judge Carter." She smiled faintly. "You're welcome, Matthew." As he walked away, Lillian felt something unexpected. Hope. Not because the world was perfect. Not because she'd been treated fairly. But because one man chose to face his mistake with humility. And because she chose to see the humanity in him even when he failed. When she stepped back into her quiet home, she whispered to her late husband, "You were right, Michael. The world can get better. One heart at a time." And with that, she closed the door softly, holding her sister's medication and a renewed belief in compassion. Fragile, but real.